Hello, friends, and happy Saturday. Sorry, I forgot to add myself back to the stream. Oops, my bad. And actually, speaking of that, it's going to make an issue. Anyways, it doesn't matter. We're having technical difficulties up the wazoo. One of those apparently is me just talking too much, or not talking enough, or not talking loud enough. I don't know. I can't figure it out anymore. Anyways, I hope everyone is having a happy Saturday, or at least a better Saturday than I am. Or if you happen to be watching this or listening to this later down the road, hope you're having a fantastic day, whatever day that might be. As you are aware, hopefully you're aware, my name is Kevin, and you are indeed watching the Libertarian Hour here on the Kevin Lee Show. This show airs, actually I changed this graphic, well, same time actually, but we do air at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific every Saturday. It's about a 1-hour show, if you weren't certain. This is a show in which we talk about a number of subjects, but all generally speaking coming from the libertarian mind. In the sense that we are trying to give information, if you will, to inform people not only on topics, but on what those topics are from a perspective of a libertarian, or at least one libertarian. And let's face it, that's how all libertarians, at least any true libertarians, really think. I mean, there is no blanket belief system for libertarians other than the individual. If you fight for the rights of the individual and allow the individual to do whatever they want as long as they are not harming any other person, then you're essentially a libertarian, more or less. But yeah, so anyways, happy Saturday. We are continuing our series. Let's see. Well, do I want to? Okay, so first off, we're going to be continuing our series, Myths and Misunderstandings. It is not easy for me to say myths and misunderstandings within the Libertarian Party, where this week we'll be discussing healthcare, what's wrong with it, and basically how we can fix it. And again, as I've kind of warned you before, me being a libertarian, I am actually a small L libertarian, which means I don't always necessarily line up or agree 100% with the party's platform, and this happens to be one of those areas where I personally do not. But I absolutely understand why they believe what they believe. I'm not saying what they believe is wrong. I think many people believe what they believe, even non-libertarians, both people on the right and the left. I think they agree with the libertarians on this. But and again, I don't disagree with them. I just don't 100% agree. And we'll get more into that in just a second. But again, I want to remind everyone why we're doing this. There's a lot of times I will be talking to people, even people who claim to be libertarians, and they really don't seem to know or understand what it is libertarians believe. Or they might have that core principle of the individualism, but have no idea of what else, the Libertarian Party, quote unquote, thinks about things like taxation or gun ownership or drugs or, healthcare, whatever it might be. So, and luckily for us, the Libertarian Party has a list of these issues on their website, and they have little statements. And each week we're going to start going through these little statements. That being said, week one, where are my graphics here? Week one, we did immigration and our borders. Now, the other week I went ahead and gave a summary of all the past weeks, and it was a bit time consuming. I don't know if I'm going to do that today, but basically immigration and borders is exactly what you think immigration and borders. There's a lot of misunderstanding, because even within the Libertarian Party, some people believe that libertarians believe in open borders. That's not true at all. Again, this is not bashing on anybody, but what libertarians truly believe is free movement for Americans, as well as a much more streamlined, better functioning immigration system. Greatly streamlined. Right now, it can take, it's not uncommon to wait 10, 15, 20 years to become an American citizen. And though I do believe we want people to truly want to become an American and shouldn't just accept people 5 minutes after they walk in the door, I don't think most people have to wait 10, 15, 20 years to make that commitment, as well as the cost they put on people. It's just, it's unacceptable. And so if you want to learn more about that, please go ahead and watch week one. Week two, we talked about ending the war on drugs. The way you end the war on drugs is you end the war on drugs. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people out there who do not like this argument, and I get it. People will make comments like, oh, if you do that, then a bunch of people are going to start ODing and dying in the streets. I don't think it'd be a bunch of people, but it will be a number of people, and it will happen. But the idea behind it is that twofold, essentially. First off, drugs are dangerous because of how they're made and how they're manufactured. They're done so secretly in secret labs all over the country and all over the world, done by people who sometimes are well-meaning, sometimes people are not, and they will poison people and they don't know what they're doing. So we have bad drugs going into the system as is, and also it creates a black market, which empowers gangs and violence and the shootings you hear in Chicago, 90% of those are over drugs or over gangs, which are, again, are powered by drugs in the black market. So we can start eliminating these things. We will have some other problems to deal with, but once we get over that hump, we'll be golden. That's our opinion. So again, if you want to learn more about the war on drugs, you can go to week 2. Week 3, it's actually a little bit more straightforward, and I almost even thought about not doing this one because, frankly, gun ownership is pretty black and white. At least it should be. It's in our Constitution. It's the Second Amendment. It's very important. Most people realize that we have the right to own and bear arms in the United States. The reason why I did bring it up, though, is because, first off, and this was completely unrelated. I had no idea because I was already scheduled to do week 3. I was already scheduled to do the gun ownership talk before New York decided to attack the NRA. But that said, it just kind of worked out that way. But that's a perfect example of what's happening. And there are not a large number, but a good enough large number of very loud, vocal people who do believe that we should not be allowed to own guns. And unfortunately, they're gaining not support, but I mean, I guess it is kind of support. So what's happening is you have all these politicians like AOC and people on the left who they have their vision of how our country should be, regardless of if it's completely unconstitutional or it disregards the fact that we are a republic. They don't care at all in any way, shape, or form, and they want to change and remold our country into what they want it to be. Okay, and again, they have the right to do that. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about America. We're not always going to be necessarily one thing. If we all decide to become something else, we decide to become something else. We can do that as long as we stick to our Constitution. And again, our Constitution does guarantee us the right to bear arms and own guns, and we should have the right to do it. I don't think this is a difficult concept, but it is for some. So if it is a difficult concept for you, or if you don't quite understand, you can go ahead and hop back over to week 3, which was last week. That would have been August 8th. And you can listen to that episode. Again, these are only about 1 hour each. But I do encourage you to watch or listen to these whenever you want. And now we're going to get into week 4. And again, week 4 is going to be healthcare, and generally healthcare reform. Libertarians believe that the current way we are allowing interference by the government is not helping, but rather hindering medical advancements. And this is a pretty much black and white statement, and it's true. If you ask the average American what it is they believe about healthcare, about what works, what doesn't, is it good, is it bad, I can guarantee you there's going to be a number of people who have an opinion. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong what their opinion is, it's just their opinion. And that is absolutely okay. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. And of course, we should start relying on people who actually work in the industry, understand the industry, of course, as with anything. A politician who knows nothing about food safety should be overseeing, the USDA or the FDA. Just shouldn't be allowed just because they have no idea what they're doing, right? I mean, it's nothing wrong for them to have opinion on it, but they shouldn't be overseeing it. In the same sense, when it comes to healthcare, if you've never dealt with the healthcare system in the sense that you've never worked as a nurse or a technician or a physician or in billing or accounting or administration, you have an opinion, but your opinion may not carry as much weight as someone who does have that experience. And even again, just because you have experience doesn't mean that you have a good opinion. I'll state that flat out. I worked 10 years in the medical industry on many different levels. Let me give you just a tiny little bit of background on me. Because this show is not about me, so I don't want to make it about me. But more or less, the Cliff Notes version is when it comes to working, for whatever reason, I can't even tell you what it is. I don't know if it's my work ethic. I don't know if it's dumb luck. I don't know if I've got, an angel watching over me. I can't tell you. But whenever I get into a company, an industry, with no experience, on the bottom, I'm talking the bottom rung, I will find myself 6 months, 12 months, 18 months near the top. Every time. And I have no idea why. It is weird. I'm not going to lie. It's strange. Perfect example, I went into manufacturing as a young man. Had no experience. Got in actually as a temp in the shipping receiving office, right? 12, 13 months in, I was literally offered a position as a director of materials management after I'd already been a warehouse, after I had been overseeing the entire warehouse production. It's just the way it works. So when I went to the medical field, it was very much the same way. I came in very low, and before I knew it, I was sitting on boards, and I was sitting on inter-hospital boards, statewide boards. I was getting promoted. I was getting offered jobs I had absolutely no qualifications for, to be honest. And I wouldn't have never taken it, but they kept throwing more money at me. So I like money, so I took them. And I kept moving up rather quickly. So I have a lot of experience in the healthcare industry, because not only were we a healthcare system, we were our own insurance. So I kind of have the understanding of both aspects of it, as well as dealing with the government. I'm not going to give names, but there was another hospital, or not just hospital, but organization that was trying to move into our territory. And because of certificate of need qualifications, we were able to block them from coming in, at least temporarily. I left the industry. I left our organization. I left the industry after that, and I don't know what happened. I don't think they ever necessarily made their way in, but they might have. But basically, this is something called like a certificate of need, which basically is you have to prove that you need more beds or you need another facility. You have to prove it, and the government has to allow it. And that's kind of one of the things we're going to be talking about today. But we're not going to be doing it just from my words and my experience, as much as I would love to. And I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to do that without bringing other people into the conversation. And I wouldn't want to represent their opinions on things or the experiences that they were involved in and name them publicly without them having a say-so in it. So because we can't do that right now, we're just going to kind of talk more about what the view is from the Libertarian Party on healthcare. And then I'm going to tell you too, as well, you know what, I'll start with my opinion on healthcare. As someone who worked many years and high levels of healthcare, I don't like healthcare. I don't like hospitals, and I don't like doctors. I've come to find out that you really can't trust any of those aforementioned people. You just can't. I'm sorry, you can't. And if you happen to be a doctor or an administrator or what have you, I'm sorry. No good. But nurses I love. I love nurses. Fantastic. And again, not every nurse, but generally speaking, nurses are amazing. Nurses are literally what make hospitals happen on any level, regardless if you're an ER nurse, surgical nurse, if you're a specialized nurse, let's say in telemetry or, NICU or whatever it might be. You're the people that actually provide healthcare. So thank you. But anyways, as far as it comes to reform of the actual healthcare system, I personally believe, and you'll hear me say this again and again and again. And again, this is not a very libertarian view. I will tell you that flat out 100%. Again, I'm a small L libertarian. I am someone who's a libertarian person at heart and in my mind, but I do understand, I'm very pragmatic. I understand how the world works. And how can I put this? So I'm trying to figure out a nice way to put this. More or less, the way I view healthcare is the same way I actually view education. We live in the most prosperous country that's ever existed on the face of the planet. We are literally the most powerful, the richest, the most privileged country ever. I mean, you could be a poor person in this country and you are doing better than 90% of the rest of the world, period. Literally. I don't know if you understand that, if you can appreciate that, but you can literally be struggling. You can be on the verge of being kicked out of your house, but you probably still own 1 car, 2 cars. Maybe your family owns 3 cars. You have a bed, you have a refrigerator, you have food in there, right? Most people even have some type of savings account, might have $10 in it, but at least you have something like that. If you're in that situation, you are literally in the top, 2-3% of the world. It's amazing when you think about that. But yeah. Again, let's get back on topic here. But when it comes to healthcare, I believe there's 101 million ways in this country and in this world to make money. And I believe that 2 of the most prosperous areas in our country should not even be on the table for consideration. And that is healthcare and education. Now, I know it's going to upset a lot of people. They're going to be like, what are you talking about? That's insane. You cannot have that opinion. But actually, I can, because it's an opinion. I'm not saying it's fact. I'm not saying we should make that the law of the land. I'm just telling you what I believe. I believe that let me put it this way. This is the reason why I believe this. And it has nothing to do with any other country or what England is doing or anywhere in Scandinavia is doing or Australia. None of that. I'm not comparing us to anyone else. I'm comparing us to ourselves. And when I view any entity, regardless of what it is, it could be a company, It could be a municipality, like a town or a village or a city or a county or a state or the U.S. government. I mean, it doesn't make a difference who you are, what you are, any type of organization of any sort. And our biggest organization is these united, 50 states. I don't believe it's acceptable that we have people who are, dying over the lack of the most basic needs in our country. Because I believe that no matter who you are, how powerful you are, how strong you are, that you're no stronger than your weakest link. And when you have people who are dying in the streets from simply not having bread or water or shelter or a simple medication, that's disgusting. And you are a weak, pathetic entity, whatever you might be. Again, if you're a company, if you're a state, if you're a town, if you're the U.S. government, doesn't matter who you are. If you allow people to die in the streets who want help, but you can't give them a $5 pill or a place where they can rest their head at night, that's pretty sad. Again, that is not a very popular libertarian view, but that is my view. I think there's 101 million ways to make money. Billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars for that matter. I don't believe healthcare and education should be those things. Now, it's not saying we should all have free healthcare or free education. I'm not saying that either, because let's be honest, there's no such thing as free. Even today, this is a concept that scares me, because I have this conversation with people all the time and they don't seem to understand there is no such thing as a free anything. Because someone is paying for it, and that someone is typically you, the taxpayer. Like the U.S. government, when you hear these things, when you hear talks about the U.S. government is paying this much money to whatever country, or this, the U.S. government has a $2.2 trillion stimulus to help us with the COVID-19 epidemic, okay? The U.S. government isn't spending a single penny because they don't have any money. Every single penny that they have, every single one comes from you. Your money. So you're paying the $2.2 trillion stimulus. You're paying for whatever this might be. So there's no such thing as free. So we, and not even just the rich people, we all are paying for it. In fact, if you really look at the numbers, rich people don't have that much money. When you look at the Warren Buffetts, the Bill Gates, the Jeff Bezos, they have $50 billion, $100 billion, $150 billion. But if you add those three guys up, it's $300 billion. That's like half of what the defense budget is for 1 year in the U.S. Let's be honest. They don't have that much money. It's the average worker who goes out. Those are the people who are paying. You're paying for all this stuff. Keep that in mind whenever you hear that the Senate or the Congress or the House is looking to spend this much money. That's you spending that money. They're spending your money, and they're not even spending your money. They're spending your kids' money and your grandkids' money. Keep that in your head too. So this is part of the reason why I'm not necessarily for just free everything, but there has to be a happy median, right? There has to be a middle of the road solution, which will allow people the freedom to choose, free market solutions, as well as be able to get healthcare or education. So again, I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm not saying I know everything. I'm not saying, come to me, I will give you the plan to utopia. No, I don't have it. I mean, maybe we could start working on it. We could have a discussion. Maybe even we'll start doing a show, like every other show down the road. We'll talk about how to reach, utopia, how to bring heaven down to earth, if you will. But again, that's for another day. But again, these are my views on it. Again, small L libertarian, talking about libertarian topics. Now, we're going to talk now more about what the Libertarian Party themselves believe. And again, I don't necessarily disagree with this. In fact, you could probably take this and meld it into what I was talking about and make it work. And there's good reason for that. And we'll get to that right now. Why don't we? So we're going to hop on over to the good old Libertarian website. It's lp.org. Again, I highly recommend you check it out, regardless if you're a libertarian or not, just so maybe you can see some different view other than maybe your Republican view or Democrat view. Or maybe you're an independent and you have no idea what you think or why you should think it. You can go right on here and see what someone else thinks. And this is actually the third largest party in the country. Some people know the name Libertarian, but they have no idea what they think and understand. That's why we're doing this series. That's why we're talking about these topics. So this is what the Libertarian Party talks about when they talk about healthcare. And all these issues, they kind of have like a blanket statement that kind of boils everything down to like a single sentence. And for healthcare, they actually worded as libertarians believe that healthcare prices would decrease and quality and availability of healthcare would increase if providers were freed from government meddling and control. Okay? I read it to you one more time. Libertarians believe that healthcare prices would decrease and quality and availability of healthcare would increase if providers were freed from government meddling and control. And I don't disagree with any of that. That is absolutely truth. As someone who worked in the industry, as someone who worked in the billing department, someone who worked with inventory in the medical field, someone who worked in the departments, in surgery, who was a purchaser, I understand all this. I get this. Who works with budgets, I understand that government meddling and control is ruining healthcare. It's not just the healthcare industry. It's not just the greedy insurance companies, though that is part of it. And I personally believe that as well. But again, that has to do with people having to charge. Here's a perfect example. People will talk about, I got a bill and it said I owe $45 for an ace bandage and, $13 for an aspirin. Why? This is why. The hospital has to charge that much money because the insurance company is going to pay out maybe on average 20%. Maybe. So they figure out this is what it's actually costing. So 20% of that is my actual cost or a hair over my actual cost. So to get that money, I have to now multiply it and charge $45. The problem is that if you don't have health insurance, they're still going to charge you $45 for that ace bandage and $13 for that aspirin. That is unless you negotiate with them. Again, that's a conversation for a different day. There's people out there who've done some great podcasts on this topic. In fact, there's two guys who do a libertarian-minded podcast as well. I want to give them a shout out. They're Good Morning Liberty, Nate and Chuck. They're both actually involved in the healthcare industry, and they've done several podcasts on the healthcare industry. And they have over 300 episodes under their belt. So I would recommend going over there, checking things out. A little free advertising for them because they talk much more in detail about that. Again, I would love to get a huge deep dive. That would take hours and hours, and we don't have hours and hours. I have 1 hour, and we're already coming up on half an hour or 25 minutes. So we still have to go through all this stuff. I don't have time to get into all that, but that is a place to do. Otherwise, you can just do some general internet searches, and you will see the truth. So going forward, it says virtually every person wants to access. My goodness, I think I'm gonna have a sip of coffee. Hold on. Okay, all better. Virtually every person wants access to quality healthcare at an affordable price. Libertarians think the best way to achieve this is by removing government interference and enabling free markets. And I know a lot of people will hear that and they'll get scared, right? They'll say, "Oh my God, no, we can't have that. The government has that. We have to have government oversight, and we need people to tell us what we can and can't do and how things should be done. And we need all these organizations with these, the alphabet letter organizations, like the FDA, like the USDA, like, all these organizations, just making sure that we're safe and good." And I understand that argument, but it's not about government oversight. It's actually government overreach. They've got their tentacles into everything, and they slow everything down. Perfect example right now. We're dealing with COVID-19, right? Everyone is hoping for a vaccine. Now, vaccines usually take years and years, sometimes 10 years to develop, right? Because of all the steps and all the regulations. Everyone wants one done in 6 months. Well, you can't do that if you follow the regulations and the ordinances put out to you by the U.S. government or most major governments. Can't do it. But now all of a sudden they've started lifting all these restrictions and allowing people to do these multiple testings and skip steps so we can get to a vaccine. And all of a sudden it's happening where there's already countries and companies who are claiming that they're very close. They're literally on the precipice of having a finalized vaccine. They're doing some final stages. It's been months. Imagine what we could have done this before had we put this type of effort into other vaccinations. Instead of waiting 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, 12 years to get approval, we could have it done in a year, 6 months. Look at that. Another good example might be different area, different arena, but same idea. So I mentioned to it, actually on my other show, I do another show called The Daily Dirty 30. It's a little show I do for fun, about a half an hour every night, 5 nights a week at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And I was talking about recently how SpaceX had developed a capsule and a ship in a way for these astronauts to come back into our atmosphere and land back on Earth, splash down something that had been done in decades, right? But they This concept had actually come up years ago under Obama administration when he first basically got in office. Or not first got in office, but shortly after he got in office. And there was a conversation to be had. And they had declared that it would take at minimum 12 years, if not longer, and cost a projected $36 billion to develop this technology, this endeavor. And to President Obama's credit, he decided that he was going to say, no, we're not going to do that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to open this up and allow private companies to compete and try to be able to do the same thing. So they didn't have that freedom before, because I don't know if you know that U.S. government overreach stops people from, like private companies, from doing things. Obama and his administration decided to, and I guess it was an executive order, decided to waive that responsibility by the U.S. government and NASA, and decided to let private companies do it. SpaceX stepped up. It took them 6 years to accomplish this task and cost them less than $1 billion. So as you can see, the free market, when it's driven to a goal, can do things faster, more efficient, and for far less money. You know why? Do you know why that is? People always go, well, why is that? Are they cutting corners? Are they doing things? No. But the thing is that they're investors. They're companies. They want to make money. They want to make a profit. So they're not going to waste money. Unlike the U.S. government, who doesn't answer to anybody. And all they do is take your money if they need more, or they print more, which is a horrible thing. We're not going to get into that right now. But U.S. government, is like literally the top. There's no one for them to answer to, basically. So they can do whatever they want. And they'll make organizations to watch and work with other organizations, and then more organizations on top of that to deal with those organizations. You see how this works? They just keep building more and more and more instead of just actually trying to get to the goal, unlike the free market would. That's a perfect example. Now, again, I don't want to spend this entire time going off on tangents, because it might be confusing, and B, we're not going to get done. We need to get done. We only got 60 minutes, my friends. All right, so again, removing government interference and enabling free markets would be a positive thing. This is what libertarians believe, and I fully agree with that. I am full on for what they are saying. And I guess I'll point out maybe if there's an area where I don't fully agree, but we'll continue. Government inappropriately controls our healthcare system in many ways, or our healthcare in many ways. Government and a handful of insurance companies have a virtual monopoly as payers. Because of this, they make most of the decisions about what kinds of healthcare are available. Now, that's actually a very important thing. Most people don't know this. There's only a handful of major insurance companies in the United States. And even if you hear about these other ones, usually they're just subsidiaries of a major one. But that being said, but they have a monopoly as payers in our country, both the government and these insurance companies. And because of that, they are allowed to make the decisions because they're working in tandem to allow certain things. Let me put this out there for you. And you can disagree with this all you want. I'm totally okay with that. But I want you to think about this. Do you believe if the U.S. government, not even the U.S. government, but say a company, a person had come forward and said, guess what? I have the cure for cancer. It's right here. It's in this vial. We can cure all cancer right now, today. Do you think they would ever let that out? I mean, honestly, do you believe they would? I mean, I believe there's certain people who would want it to be out, especially even in the government. But when it came down to it, do you think they would let it out? I don't. I know this because I've worked in the industry. I know how people think. They would lose billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. And that's just straight up from the hospitals. That's not talking about the doctors, researchers, universities, pharmaceutical companies. No one would allow it to happen. And in fact, I'm almost convinced. I'm not a controversial kind of guy. I don't believe in, these theories that, whatever is being hidden off in the lab. But it might be. Someone out there might have a cure. And it might just be locked away somewhere. And maybe it doesn't cure all cancer. Maybe it only cures certain kind of cancers, but maybe it's enough of them that they don't want it to get out. Could be. Yeah. And if not, if it did come forward, I don't ever see any major player in this allowing it to happen, just for that reason. Now that goes on to say, government regulates where, when, and who may open new healthcare facilities. And we were kind of talking about that before. I literally worked in an organization where another healthcare system, actually from a different state, was trying to come down into where we were at and create a hospital. They even bought the land. They were trying to just go and build it. Now we as workers wanted this, and the citizens around us who lived in the area wanted this. Now, why would we want it? Why would the citizens want it? Because it creates competition. It creates an ability to lower prices potentially for residents and customers and raise our salaries as workers, because you'd have to compete. Because trust me, if the hospital opened up literally down the road from where we were at minimum, a third would jump ship before day one. They would have signed their contract, probably gotten a free month's pay and vacation for a month before they started work at the new hospital. I guarantee it. And then probably would have been a total of half of them. And then all of that, so you're going to have to pay your good workers more money to keep them, and then still lose workers and have to get new workers, train them, which costs lots of money. People don't realize that. The cost of having an employee isn't so much just maintaining an employee. It's training an employee, because it takes a long time, especially in the healthcare industry, to learn all the ins and outs of everything you need to know and understand. It's not like, you become an office worker somewhere and you have to learn the filing system and maybe learn how to use their accounting system, and it's going to take you a couple of weeks. No. There are many entry-level jobs within the healthcare system, even working in a kitchen, where you're going to spend 6 months training. I mean, it costs a lot of money to train somebody, and they were terrified of what it would do. And I understood why they were doing it. I was asked to come in certain aspects to help support that effort to stop, and I said no. My director at the time knew that I was able to be a good voice in the argument and wanted me on board, and I said I couldn't do it. Not in good faith. No, sir. And that got ugly, to say the least. But yeah, it's a strange thing to think that not only does the government have the right to tell you that you can open up a business, but healthcare. I mean, when people think of like helping people, why would anyone try to stop someone from opening up an immediate care center or an emergency room or a surgery center or a medical center? And just so you know, a medical center is actually a hospital. It's just another way of saying hospital. And I know this is alarming. I was on a committee, and we were trying to do outreach to the community and try to figure out, rebranding of the company, of this healthcare system I was in. And we were going around and creating surveys for local residents. And we literally at one point had a door-to-door campaign, which I was mandatory to volunteer on the weekend a couple times. We would literally knock on people's door, and they say, hello, hi, we're from, whatever healthcare system. We just have a few questions for you. I want to kind of get your opinion. Thinking about making some changes. And we would ask them, I said, okay, we would tell them where we're from, and then we would say blah, 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 medical center. And they'd be like, oh, well, that's a problem. We need a hospital. Like, I'm sorry. Oh, no, we need more hospitals. We don't need medical centers. I'm like, ma'am, that is, medical center is a hospital. Well, no, it's not. Yeah, yes, it is. So we rebranded medical center to hospital because people didn't realize that medical centers were hospitals. So just put that out there. Just for a little levity. Okay, moving on. All right, government agencies greatly slow development of and access to new medicines, devices, and technologies that may improve quality of care and reduce cost of care. Now, again, there's obvious reasons why this sometimes is. Sometimes government agencies do slow the development or access to medicines and devices and technologies because they want to be safe. They want just everything to be thrown into the market. And I think anyone with half a brain is okay with that. The problem is that they don't slow it down so they can evaluate. They don't slow it down to do proper trials. They slow it down to the point where it's like watching water become ice, right? It just takes forever to watch it freeze and then get there and then to unfreeze. I mean, it takes forever for these people to get these things done. It's ridiculous. There's times where they might come up with a technology or device, and it might take 12, 15 years to get approval, if it ever gets approval. God forbid, we have innovation. God forbid we have people who are smarter than you and I who have come up with this idea and say, hey, look what I have. And if we use this, we could use it to, take care of XYZ or, removal of whatever. And it's be safer and less invasive. Oh, well, it's going to take a while for us to get there. I don't know. We'll have to see. And this can take literally decades sometimes, and sometimes never get approval. And there could be nothing wrong with it. But if you don't get the stamp of approval, never happens. So again, I 100% agree with this in the Libertarian Party. The government is not always the problem, but they are often the problem. And I'll just continue reading. It says, currently the healthcare industry is virtually monopolized by the government and a handful of insurance companies, like the previous said. They hold the checkbook and wield it for their own benefit. And they do. I mean, especially insurance companies. They make lots of money. And it's not such a, it still occurs, but it's not as prominent as it used to be. But when I was younger, there were people who would get paid very little money who work as agents for some of these insurance companies, but they'd make all their money from bonuses. And you know how they got their bonuses? By denying claims. It's a real thing. Look it up. Each year, the government sets prices that they will pay providers, including doctors and hospitals. Each year, these payments increase at less than the cost of inflation, while the cost of providing medical care increases by a far greater amount. It's pretty black and white. I think anyone can understand that. This has unpleasant consequences for everyone. Providers are incentivized to do what is quick and cheap, not what is in the best interest of a particular patient. Doctors are forced to reduce the time they spend with patients, and this reduces quality of care. Hospitals are discouraged for upgrading facilities, and this reduces quality of care. Worse yet, insurance companies often set their payments according to the government's prices. This regular ratcheting down on payment to providers while actual cost to provide care increases, makes providers less able to provide high-quality health care. And this is true. This is absolutely true. The government, through their own Medicare programs and what have you, will decide what they're willing to pay. And because of the government, you as a hospital essentially have to take whatever payment they give you. And then when the insurance companies catch wind that the government's only going to pay X amount for an MRI or even an X-ray or whatever, hospitals like, well, it costs me more to do that. So hospitals now have to start juggling their accounting and figure out, well, if we're losing money here, how can we make money here? And that's why you start seeing all hospitals doing these weird and strange things, which just don't make much sense. And it's disgusting. I mean, I'm telling you right now, I despise the entire industry. There's a reason why I'm not doing it anymore. It wasn't because I wasn't qualified or wasn't good at it. I had offers to go all over the country. But it's a disgusting, terrible, very good, bad industry. I mean, I'm trying to use words that are friendly to people. And again, and that does not say that there aren't any good people. There are good people in the industry. There are great directors throughout the country and throughout the world. There's some amazing doctors, and the nurses across the board are outstanding. They never truly get enough credit. They don't. Again, and I can't say that ever enough. But again, this is a problem. These are price gouging and price wars, and the government you wouldn't think the government would play that much into everything, but they do. And that's the sad part. The U.S. government, if anyone, should be out of the picture, right? They should not be setting prices. They should not be influencing the market. They should not be limiting ingenuity, but they are. That's exactly what the U.S. government does. And I'm sure other governments probably do it. I don't think they do it necessarily to the same level that the U.S. government does, but maybe they do. I have worked with and talked to people from all over the world: Japan, China, Australia, South Africa, Argentina, Venezuela, Mexico, Canada, Russia even. Actually, we used to work with a gentleman, and that was so bizarre. I worked with a gentleman who was a heart surgeon in Russia, and he came here, and they wouldn't accept any of his credentials, except for the bare minimum. So he actually just went back to school and became an anesthesiologist instead, because it would only take him a couple of years to get it done, and he did. And then he was just an anesthesiologist in America, even though he was a heart surgeon, and a successful one in Russia. It's crazy. But anyways, again, we will be running out of time if I do not keep reading. Institutions such as the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, also limit cost-effective access to quality care. The approval process for new drugs and technology is lengthy and expensive. Because of this, the process favors the biggest companies with the most lawyers. There are many stories of patients dying while waiting for approval of a new device or medicine. Instead, libertarians call for free market testing, which will be inherently incentivized to be efficient and fair in their process. Again, think about what Elon Musk was able to do with the rocket. Half the time, 1/36th of the cost. Additionally, libertarians believe in the right to try. especially in situations with terminal diagnosis. The government must not be permitted to deny patients access to new medical advances. And that's exactly what Trump did. He signed a EO a while ago, a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Allowing people to be able to try things because, hey, if you're dying anyways, you should have the right to try something, right? And that's something Trump did. And I'm sorry, if you're on the left and you disagree with Trump, you can't ever attack him for that. And you know what? Obama had 8 years to do that. Clinton had 8 years to do that. Bush had 8 years to put an EO in to try to make it so people could get these treatments. They wouldn't do it, but Trump did. So there you go. So tort reform would also greatly reduce the cost of healthcare. The current tort system raises the cost of care by encouraging unnecessary testing and procedures, which increase the cost of medical care by forcing medical teams to devote significant time and resources to preventing or defending against unwarranted legal actions. When legitimate claims arise, they should be taken seriously and resolved fairly through the courts. However, frivolous and fraudulent claims should not be tolerated as our current system does. These disparage our healthcare providers and the quality of medical care they can provide and they can receive. Libertarians oppose fraud in all forms. I don't think anyone can argue with that statement. Now it goes on to say, in short, libertarians believe that each person has the right to make their own medical decisions. Another reason why I'm bringing this, I'll stop right here, is because think about what's going on, okay? We're going to talk very quickly about hydrochloroquine. Now, hydrochloroquine is a very questionable drug. Is it effective in helping treat COVID? The jury's completely out on that. Some people say absolutely not. Some people say absolutely. Is it effective in treating as a prophylactic, preventing COVID? Well, there's a lot more information that says that yes, it does. It's actually rather helpful. Some people believe absolutely that it doesn't, but there are, 14 studies that I've seen internationally that 100% support hydrochloroquine. You worked in unison with zinc and sometimes azithromycin or an antibiotic of some sort to help prevent COVID-19. And there's many countries who are absolutely okay with it. For some reason, we're not in America. In fact, we're actively stopping it. And people will use claims that hydrochloroquine is dangerous. Well, it's not. I've watched interviews with people who not only manufacture it, but doctors who prescribe it to people, and they say it's actually as safe as most vitamins, safer than aspirin, technically. It's been used widely by literally billions of people, and billions upon billions of doses have been taken in the last 60 years with a very, very, very small side effect range and an even smaller range of fatalities or death. So I'm not saying people should be taking hydrochloroquine. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying if you're interested and your physician agrees, you should be able to prescribe this. It's legal. It's in most countries, it can literally be bought over the counter. You can literally go to like a drugstore and just buy it. Okay. In America, in many areas, in many states, that is actually being blocked. There are actually governors who are instructing pharmacists that they are not allowed to prescribe hydrochloroquine. Why would they do that? It's safe, even if it's ineffective. Why would they go through that much trouble? But yet here, we believe that each person has the right to make their own medical decisions. And you do. Even if your decision is not to do anything. Some people will be like, you know what? I'm good. I'm not going to do anything. And now that might sound crazy, but sometimes it's effective. I know someone who had cancer, and their course was to do major surgery and then a huge round of chemo, followed by, months of radiation. And they looked at their options. And they said, well, okay, as far as the surgeries go, I'm only going to get this first one done. I'm not going to get numbers 2 and 3. And I'm not going to do chemo at all. And I'm only going to do radiation. And everyone said, you're crazy. You're insane. But the doctor said, that's your wishes. You're informed. We'll do that. And they did it. And and his chance of survival before all this would have been done was less than 10%. After doing the most minimal invasive procedures they could do and just the radiation, he was cancer-free and has been for years. Doctors have no idea how it happened. They said this could have never worked, but it did. Well, he, going against his own physician's suggestions, decided this is what he's going to do. Because you know why? He did his own research. He decided this is what I think is going to be effective. I don't believe this is effective or this is effective, so I'm going to just do these ones. And I'm going to, change my diet, get plenty of sleep, all these things that he thought was best to do. And he's still around. Still to this day, the doctors don't believe it, but they saw it firsthand. They saw that it happens. So yes, each individual, especially an adult, should have the right to make any medical decisions that they want. As long as it's legal and they're in conjunction with their doctor, they absolutely should. And no governor should be able to be banning a drug because for political reasons, because they don't like it or they don't want it to be successful. It's ridiculous. And again, I'm not saying you should take hydrochloroquine, not in the slightest bit, but no one should be telling you that you can't. Okay? It's safe. And in certain instances, it's proven to be effective, like as a prophylactic. So, yeah, there we go. Libertarians also support removing government meddling from healthcare. We think that this and tort reform are the best ways to improve quality of healthcare, increase access to healthcare, and decrease prices of healthcare in our country. And I agree with everything. So, like I said before, my vision of healthcare doesn't necessarily 100% line up with the Libertarian Party. And it isn't because I don't agree with what they had to say. As you can see, we just read through the whole thing, and I completely agree with what they had to say. My issue is that I don't think it goes far enough. I think, generally speaking, this will free up a lot of things. It'll allow people to get better treatment. It will lower costs 100%. But again, what about people who can't afford healthcare at all? I mean, healthcare is ridiculously expensive. Ridiculously expensive. There's no reason in the world that you and I should be paying literally hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month for healthcare for insurance. It's unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And I think taking what the Libertarian Party said here will help get us to the place, towards the place we want to be. But for the people who do not have the money, who cannot afford healthcare, they should have a way or the means to be able to get healthcare. Same thing with education. Maybe we should have, expand Medicare, but not Medicare for all. I don't know. I mean, again, this is a huge conversation that needs to be had. And I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I would love to have a conversation about it, though. 100%. I'd love to have a conversation about it. But again, I don't know anyone who could disagree with anything that was on this platform today about healthcare. I mean, unless you work for an insurance company or the government and you're afraid of losing control, then I could see you making an argument. But for anyone else, you, me, everyday average person, how could you disagree with wanting to open up, the doors and allow people to be able to, develop devices without the hindrance of the government telling you that you can't? I mean, literally, there are people who will come up with amazing devices and techniques, and they're not even allowed to even talk about them legally because the U.S. government says, no, you can't. That's a real thing. That happens all the time. Many people who know me realize that I believe the medical field to be full of nothing but monsters. And when they hear me say that, initially they kind of get like, whoa, that's a harsh word. Why would you think that? But if you knew what I knew, you would understand. Like what I'm even saying here right now in front of you is 1/1000th of the things that I've seen in the medical industry. It's a disgusting, terrible, as it stands right now today, it's a disgusting, terrible industry that needs complete reform from the top down. I'm not saying doctors are overpaid. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that there isn't a good reason for them to want to do certain things in certain ways. But the reason, in my opinion, is not good enough. I believe that they are, not everyone, of course, but unfortunately, some of the people in the key positions are some of the most horrible people on the face of the planet. They care about nothing but the bottom line. You, as a patient, will never be anything but a number. And if that number turns a certain color because you cost too much money, they will cut you off and let you die like that. And I wish they'd say that it was only like the top couple people in each company or industry, but it is literally the majority because they all want to get paid. They all want to get their bonuses, and they're not going to get it if you cost too much money. May it be an insurance company, maybe if they work for the government, may it be even for a non-for-profit healthcare system. It doesn't matter. So we need change, and we need it quickly. Again, I don't believe Medicare for all is the answer. I don't believe free healthcare, because as we've discussed, does not exist. That's not the answer. What is the answer is finding a way to open up and allow the free market to come in, just like Elon Musk did with SpaceX and instead of having the U.S. government spend billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to develop a technology that probably would have taken probably 15 or 20 years, he was able to do it in 6 years. And able to do it for less than $1 billion. Now, $1 billion is still a ton of money. But even of their projected cost, it was 1/36 of their projected cost. This is what the free market does. It creates innovation. It creates incentive to want to get something done in a timely manner. Excuse me. Need a little drink there. So this is kind of where we're at now. And it's sad that we have to have this conversation with people, but we do, because no one seems to care, I guess. Or the ones that do either don't have a voice or are afraid to speak up. That's another thing. Most people do not appreciate how scary it is to be involved in healthcare. When you're working in healthcare, because this is your job, this is your livelihood, like anything. Imagine, say you're an accountant. And you work for a large company, and you're one of 50 accountants in your department. So you are very replaceable. But you find something that's wrong, and you know it's wrong, but you know that if you tell on them, the person above you who's doing this wrong thing, you're out of a job because no one's going to trust you, or you're just going to get fired and no one's going to believe you. What are you going to do? You're not going to speak up. Well, if you're in the healthcare industry, it's very much the same thing. If you see something going wrong and you speak up, chances are you'll be out of work soon. And you won't just be out of a job. The healthcare industry is a very tight-knit organization. People at one hospital know about everyone else at every other hospital. And it's true. That's the way it works. I actually talked with people all over the country. In fact, all over the world. I went to speak at different conferences and symposiums, and I met people from all over the world, and I made contacts, and I networked, and I still talk to some of those people who live in Japan. One of the directors at the Cleveland Clinic, I still talk to on a regular basis. And, it's a small world in healthcare. And if you get blackballed, you're out. I don't care who you are. I don't care what credentials you have. I don't care what degrees you have. I don't care what experience you have. I don't care what your name is. I don't care how many letters you have after your name. It won't matter. Because if you're out, you're out. Simple as that. And ultimately, everyone in healthcare answers to one entity, and that's the U.S. government. They have the final say on everything, even general licensing, let alone if you're allowed to open up an office or to create another hospital or what have you. And all this has to stop, because if it doesn't stop, it's only going to get worse. And again, it's not going to. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, because that would take radical change. And if there's one thing that the U.S. government is not good at, it's radical change. But we need to do something. We need to get more of a libertarian-minded person in the White House, as well as more of those people in the Senate, as well as the House of Representatives, as well as, and more importantly, most people don't realize how important local politics is. Even as much as the U.S. government, the federal government does, even as much as the Congress does or the president can do, what affects you is your local government from the state level down. Think about it. Even with COVID-19, there's so many people angry that the president isn't doing enough. And they're saying, you need to do more. But guess what? The president doesn't have that much power. You know who has the power? Your governor does. Your mayor does. They're the ones who are allowed to decide what you can and can't do. They're the ones who can order you to put on a mask. They're the ones who can order your business closed or allow it to reopen. Not the president, not the senators, not the Speaker of the House. No, it's your governor, your mayor. Those are the people who are going to affect your life. And those are the people you need to start investigating. Right now, we're going right now into another election cycle. And there's many people in your area. May they be state senators, state representatives, maybe your governor's up, maybe your mayor's going up for re-election. Maybe there are councilmen or council people. I don't know what we call them now. And alder people. I don't know what the technical terms are these days. Everything changes. But you can start investigating who's on your ballot. You can go to like places and check on your ballot and see who's there and actually find out what they think and what they mean when they have arguments on these sort of topics for healthcare reform or crime or police reform or what have you. Look, see who you're actually voting for before you vote for them. It's important. It's very important. That will actually help us get over the hump in the healthcare industry and every other industry. Absolutely 100%. So that being said, we're already creeping up on an hour, and I didn't want to leave without reminding everyone that because this is only a once a week show, so I figure every week I will mention it. Because a lot of people will reach out to me and say, well, how do I find this? Or where do I find this? Or how do I contact you? And I say it often, but no one seems to listen. But I'm going to say it again. Head over to our website, which is thekevinleeshow.com. That's thekevinleeshow.com. And on there, you're going to find literally links for anything and everything you could ever imagine for the Kevin Lee Show, for the Libertarian Hour, for the Daily Dirty 30, which is one of my other podcasts, as well as another podcast I do called Whatever with Kevin, which is literally whatever. We don't do it very often, but I think I'm going to do one this weekend. So if you go over to the website, you'll be able to either watch it live directly from there or find links to where you can watch it on your preferred source. We do broadcast to Facebook, to YouTube, to Twitter/Periscope, to Twitch, to dlive.tv. We're on float.app. And I can even go to more. I just don't know what other platforms you might want to check us out on. But if you have any suggestions, let us know. Otherwise, you can listen to the podcast anytime and on any source. We're, of course, on the major ones. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. We're there. You can anywhere. If you have any specific little app for Android, or you just put our name in there under the Libertarian Hour or the Daily Dirty 30, and we're going to come right up. But yeah, just make sure to subscribe so you get notified whenever we either do put out a new episode, and you can listen to it and join us and join the conversation. And like I said, this was week 4. There's going to be 10 weeks, actually, of this series. So we're only on week 4. So we are in healthcare this week, which means next week we are doing foreign policy. The Libertarians seek a United States at peace with the world. If nothing else, it should be a very informative conversation, because let's face it, how many Americans can you imagine that actually think that the United States could be at peace with the world? I don't think you can find many, but it's a conversation we're going to attempt to have next week, and you're not going to want to miss it. So go ahead, mark your calendars. We will be doing the Libertarian Hour next Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And don't forget, we do the Daily Dirty 30, Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And yeah, we'll catch you at one of those points in the near future. But I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, have a good rest of your weekend, and I hope you have a fantastic week until we have a chance to talk again. But until then, bye.